Harry is in a dark place. Insiders close to the prince have revealed that he's struggling mentally. He's not a happy or a well bunny. Now, for months, we've been reporting on the Mark Dolan show that there's trouble in paradise and that King Charles's youngest son has finally woken up and become painfully aware of the truly shocking consequences of his marriage to Meghan Markle. Now, the guy has no job. The charities are becoming a public relations dumpster fire, especially African Parks and Sente Barley. He's running out of money fast. His brother won't speak to him.
There is a particular kind of unravelling that happens slowly. That is the morning Harry is living through right now. Not in London, not in the corridors of the Royal Courts of Justice or in the formal language of a palace rejection, but in Montecito, California. In the house that was supposed to be the beginning of the free life, in the community that was supposed to welcome him as a private person rather than as a prince. The people who know him, the small circle of friends and advisors who have watched the first weeks of March 2026 unfold from close range, are using a word that has not often been applied to Prince Harry. They are worried.
Been told that Harry is prone to having a short temper, and it's abundantly clear that he's not in any way on board with how Archie and Lily are being raised. Why? Well, because Meghan decides everything, and she's decided to put them into the spotlight, making them mini celebrities, which is Harry's worst nightmare. Don't forget, he spent his childhood in that house behind me. He was born in the glare of publicity, and it's exactly what he does not want for Archie and Lily.
Today we are going to take you through everything that has happened to Harry's life in America in these past weeks. The financial losses, the professional collapse, the personal isolation, the strain in his marriage, and the particular weight of finding yourself in a country that welcomed you as a symbol and is now watching to see what you do when the symbol has nothing left to stand on. We are going to tell you what those closest to him are seeing. And we are going to do it honestly, without cruelty and without satisfaction. Because this is a human story about a man in genuine difficulty.
That Harry's got no energy. He just looks tired. The guy is shattered. He's in his early 40s. He looks about 60. He's exhausted. His body language, the shoulders are hunched over like that. Look, he's really sort of bent double, like an old man.
We are going to take our time, because you deserve to have it told properly. So settle in and let's begin. To understand where Harry is right now, you have to understand what he was expecting the first weeks of March 2026 to look like. In late February, Harry was in London for his court case against Associated Newspapers Limited, the publisher of the Daily Mail and the Mail on Sunday. He had brought this lawsuit over several years, at a reported cost of $15 million in legal fees alone. He had told friends, told journalists, told anyone who would listen, that he believed victory was not just possible, but likely. That the Daily Mail had spent years conducting illegal surveillance on him, that he was going to prove it, that he was going to change the face of British media. He believed it. Those who spoke to him in the weeks before the trial describe a man who had convinced himself that this was the moment everything turned around, that the court case victory would provide the moral leverage to force the palace into reconsidering its position on his return, that the financial settlement, which his team had projected at $50 million or more, would resolve the mounting pressure on his finances and give him a stable foundation from which to rebuild. He had a plan, and the plan had a shape, and the shape made sense to him. And then, on the morning his key witness took the stand, the plan ceased to exist. Gavin Burrows, the private investigator Harry's team had described for months as their most important evidence, did not confirm Harry's allegations. He dismantled them. He admitted under oath that the documents at the centre of Harry's case had been fabricated. Created, he told the court, because he was in financial difficulty and had been encouraged by people connected to Harry's legal team to produce material that would support a predetermined narrative. The smoking gun was a prop. The case was collapsing in public, and Harry, who had been pacing the corridors of the Royal Courts of Justice with visible confidence just 48 hours earlier, was watching it happen, with nowhere to go and no way to stop it. That was the beginning of what those around him are now describing as the worst consecutive stretch of his life. On March 4, 2026, his California legal team sent a $59 million bill to Buckingham Palace, an itemized demand for King Charles to cover the legal costs, the security arrangements, and $17 million in what Harry's team called opportunity cost. Charles rejected it the same day, publicly, calling the lawsuit a suicide mission and saying the palace would not pay a single penny. On March 9th, Palace formally rejected Harry's proposal for a hybrid return to royal duties. The plan he had submitted in the final week of February, a defined official role around the Invictus Games, a formal title, publicly funded security, was returned without invitation for further discussion. On March 11th, Harry gave an interview to an American podcast in which he suggested that his family was choosing not to help him when resources existed to do so. On March 12th, King Charles eliminated the private annual allowance he had been paying Harry, $2.7 million a year, with immediate effect and no provision for reinstatement. In the space of 13 days, Harry had lost his court case, been rejected for a return to royal duties, been publicly refused financial help by his father, and lost the private allowance that had been one of the primary foundations of his financial stability. 13 days. If you are watching this for the first time and you want to follow this story as it continues, and it is continuing, please subscribe right now. We cover the royal family in the depth and detail these stories deserve. Hit subscribe, turn on your notifications, and every new video comes straight to you. It takes just a moment. Now let's talk about what those 13 days have looked like from inside the Montecito household. Because the professional and institutional story is one thing. The personal story, what Harry is actually experiencing day to day in the house in California he shares with Meghan and their children, is another. Sources close to the couple's California circle describe a household that has been operating under significant strain since Harry returned from London in the second week of March 2026. The strain is not new. Those who have followed the Sussex story closely have been noting signs of distance and tension for some months. But the events of early March have accelerated and deepened something that was previously manageable. Harry, by multiple accounts, came home from London changed in a way that those around him had not seen before. Not angry, not combative. Those who have observed him in previous difficult periods describe a man who processes difficulty through action, through the next legal move, the next interview, the next strategy meeting, the next attempt to force a different outcome. What they are describing now is different. A stillness, a quietness that is not peace, but its opposite. A man who is sitting with the reality of what has happened without the immediate recourse to action that has always been his instinctive response to difficulty. One source, speaking to a trusted American journalist on condition of anonymity, described Harry in the days after his return from London as deeply unhappy in a way that went beyond the immediate circumstances. Not just upset about the court case or the rejection or the allowance, but confronting something larger, something about the shape of his life and the gap between what he expected it to be at this point, and what it actually is. That gap is significant, and understanding it requires understanding what Harry expected the California chapter of his life to look like. When Harry and Meghan left the royal family in January 2020, they described their plans in terms that were specific and ambitious. They were going to be financially independent. They were going to pursue commercial opportunities that reflected their values. They were going to use their global platform for causes that mattered to them. They were going to live freely, authentically, on their own terms, without the constraints of institutional royal life. 6 years later, the picture looks different from what was promised. The financial independence has not materialized in the way they hoped. The Netflix deal is winding down. The Spotify deal ended badly years ago. The lifestyle brand has lost its primary backer. The court case that was supposed to generate a transformative settlement has instead generated a liability of $30 million or more. The private allowance that supplemented the commercial income is gone, and the Montecito estate, the physical centerpiece of the life they built, cost significant money every month to maintain. The commercial platform they were building has not produced the sustained audience that would justify the investments that were made in it. The productions that were supposed to establish them as significant creative forces in Hollywood have largely underperformed or stalled entirely. The publishing deals that followed Spare have not been renewed at comparable terms. The causes they wanted to champion, mental health, veterans' welfare, the work of the Invictus Games, remain genuinely important to Harry and remain the area of his life where his credibility is most intact. But the infrastructure of attention and resources that he built around those causes has been significantly eroded by the events of the past year. And the family life, the private life away from all of it, is under a strain that those close to the household are increasingly open about when they speak to trusted journalists. Let's pause here, because we're at the midpoint of this story, and the section ahead is the one that I think matters most to understanding where Harry goes from here. If you know someone who cares about this story, someone who has been following the Sussex chapter of royal history and who would want to understand what is happening right now with honesty and care, please share this video with them. It takes just a moment and it genuinely helps us reach more people. Thank you. Let's talk about Meghan, because the state of the marriage is the dimension of this story that those closest to both of them are most careful about discussing, and most significant in its implications for what comes next. Meghan and Harry have been through a great deal together. The departure from the royal family was not a casual decision. It was made under genuine pressure, in response to circumstances that both of them experienced as deeply painful, and in the belief that the life they were building together would be worth everything it cost. That belief has been tested, and the testing has not been evenly distributed. Meghan's response to the events of early March 2026, the court case collapse, the financial losses, the palace rejections, has been, by all external indications, to accelerate her own independent commercial strategy, her brand, her partnerships, her separate professional identity as someone whose career and reputation do not depend on Harry's institutional battles or their outcomes. Harry's response has been stillness, withdrawal, the deep unhappiness that those close to him are describing, with a care and a concern that those who know Harry well say is not performative. Two people in the same house, under the same enormous financial and personal pressure, responding in fundamentally different ways. One moving forward, one sitting still. Those dynamics, between a person who copes by acting and a person who copes by withdrawing, are among the most difficult in any close relationship. They create a distance that is not the product of any single disagreement or any single decision. It is the distance that accumulates when two people's responses to the same crisis are pulling in opposite directions. Whether that distance is navigable, whether the two of them can find a way through the divergence that the events of March 2026 have made visible, is not something that anyone outside the household can answer with confidence. What those close to them say is this: the love is real. The commitment they made to each other and to their children is real. But love and commitment, in the absence of a shared strategy for what happens next, are not always sufficient to bridge a gap that is widening in real time. The question of what happens next is the most urgent question in the Montecito household right now. Let's talk about the social dimension, because one of the things that is striking about Harry's situation in California, and striking in a way that several sources have commented on independently, is the social isolation that has developed alongside the professional and financial difficulties. Montecito, the small coastal community north of Los Angeles where Harry and Meghan settled, is populated by wealthy and often famous people who chose that particular community precisely because it offers privacy and distance from the more aggressive celebrity culture of Los Angeles itself. It is a place where, in principle, Harry and Meghan could build a normal private life alongside their neighbours. The reality has been more complicated. The sustained public controversy that has surrounded them since their arrival, the interviews, the documentary, the book, the lawsuits, has made social normalcy difficult in a community where people value discretion and where association with sustained controversy is something many of their neighbours have chosen to avoid. The social circle that Harry has in Montecito is smaller than it was when they first arrived. Several people who were initially warm toward the couple have, over time and for various reasons, created more distance. Not dramatically, not in a way that produced public incidents or reported fallouts, but with the quiet, gradual withdrawal that socially sophisticated people use when they wish to disengage without confrontation. The Invictus Games connections remain. Veterans and their families, military charities, people whose relationship with Harry is built around work he did that they respect and that continues to mean something real. Those connections are among the most solid things Harry has, but they are not the same as the daily social fabric of a community where you belong. And Harry, who grew up in one of the most socially dense environments imaginable, surrounded by staff, family, military colleagues, institutional contacts, the entire apparatus of royal life, is now navigating a social landscape that is considerably thinner than anything he has known before. That thinness is part of what those close to him are worried about, not because isolation in itself is a crisis, but because isolation in the context of financial difficulty, professional setback, institutional rejection, and marital strain creates a combination of pressures that is genuinely hard to carry. Now let's look at the broader picture of Harry's situation in America as it stands in the third week of March 2026. Because putting all the elements together, the financial, the professional, the personal, the social, produces a picture that is more serious than any single element would suggest on its own. Financially, Harry is facing a liability from the court case that could reach $30 million. The private allowance that provided $2.7 million annually is gone. The major commercial income streams have diminished significantly. The estate costs money every month. The security costs, approximately $2 million a year. The gap between income and outgoings is real, and it is not small. Professionally, the court case has damaged Harry's credibility in ways that will take time and sustained different behaviour to repair. The central narrative he built around his lawsuit, that he was courageously fighting for truth against a corrupt press, has been complicated by the revelation that his key evidence was fabricated. People who were sympathetic to that narrative have found it harder to maintain their sympathy in the face of those facts. Personally, the relationship with Meghan is under strain of a kind that those who know them say is qualitatively different from previous difficult periods. Previous strains had an external target, the royal family, the British media, the palace's institutional decisions. This strain is internal. It is about the gap between two people's responses to a shared crisis, and there is no external target to unite against. And, socially, the community he hoped would provide a foundation for a private life has remained more distant than he anticipated. That is the life that is unravelling. Not catastrophically, not irreversibly, but in ways that are real, and that those around Harry are watching with a concern they are no longer entirely concealing. What does Harry do now? That is the question that his small remaining circle of advisors and friends are working on urgently. Because the situation requires decisions, not the reactive decisions he has been making, the lawsuit, the $59 million bill, the return plan proposal, but something more considered. Something built not around forcing the outcomes he wants, but around honestly assessing what outcomes are actually available. The Invictus Games is the foundation. It is the one thing Harry has done that retains genuine and widespread respect. The next Games, the competition he founded that brings together wounded and injured service, personnel from nations around the world to compete in sport, represents a genuine opportunity. Not just as a cause, but as a commercial platform. The sponsorship value of Invictus, properly managed, is significant. The global goodwill attached to it is real. Building a professional identity around that work, rather than around the grievance narrative that has characterized so much of his public output since 2020, is the path that his advisors are most consistently recommending. But that path requires something Harry has found consistently difficult: patience. The willingness to let time and consistent behavior do the work of rebuilding a reputation that has been damaged. The acceptance that the timeline for recovery is not his to set. The people who know him best are not certain he can do it. Not because they doubt his intelligence or his capacity for change, but because the pattern of the past 6 years has been one in which Harry, when facing difficulty, reaches for action, for the next statement, the next legal move, the next attempt to force a different outcome. Sometimes the right response to difficulty is not action. Sometimes it is stillness. Not the painful, helpless stillness of someone who has run out of options, but the deliberate, productive stillness of someone who has decided to stop fighting the current and start understanding where it is actually going. Whether Harry can find that kind of stillness, whether the events of March 2026 have been sufficient to produce a genuine reckoning with the pattern of choices that led here, is the question that determines what the next chapter of his life looks like. Let's end where this story is most human. Not in the balance sheets or the legal filings or the palace communications, but in the image of a man who grew up knowing exactly who he was and where he belonged, who was the spare, who wore the uniform, who followed the coffin, who carried out the duties and attended the engagements, and played the role that was assigned to him, sometimes badly and sometimes well, but always within the structure that told him what was expected. And who decided in January 2020 that the structure was costing him too much? That the freedom on the other side of it was worth everything the departure would cost? He is living on the other side now. He has been for 6 years. And the friends who are worried about him are worried about something specific. Not the money, though the money is serious. Not the professional setbacks, though they are significant. Not even the marriage, though that matters enormously. They are worried about Harry himself, about the man underneath all the decisions and the strategies and the public statements, about whether the freedom he chose has given him what he was looking for, or whether, in the second week of March 2026, sitting in a house in California with a financial crisis and a professional collapse and a strained marriage and a family that has closed its doors, he is asking himself a question that he cannot yet answer. Was it worth it? That is not a question anyone outside can answer for him. It is not a question that this channel is going to pretend to answer. It is the most private question a person can carry, and Harry is carrying it. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end today. This is a difficult story to tell because it requires holding compassion and honesty at the same time, and we have tried to do that throughout. If you think we managed it, please leave us a comment below. Tell us what you think Harry needs most right now to find his way through this. Tell us whether you believe he will. We read every single comment, and your perspective matters to us enormously. And if you are not yet subscribed, please do it now. Click subscribe, turn on your notifications, and we will see you in the next one. Thank you. We will see you soon.